Hey Siri, do we have electricity?
Yes, the home has electricity.
Hello everyone. My name is Haider Ali Punjabi, and you just saw me ask Siri whether my home has electricity or not. And if, like me, you live in an area where there are frequent power cuts, you will be interested in knowing how to do that. So, in today's video, I'll show you how to use Home Assistant to keep track of power cuts. And to do that, you'll just need a smart plug or a bunch of smart plugs. This is an easy way to do, but it isn't as accurate. So, there will be a delay of around a minute or so between the actual power cut and when Home Assistant knows about it. There's an advanced way to do it as well, which is more accurate, but it requires you to use ESP32 and some other components, and you will need to solder them as well. I'll make a video on that later, but in today's video, I'll show you a simple way where you can use smart plugs and know if you have electricity or not. So let's get started. So here's my Home Assistant. To get started, I'll be using a smart plug from Philips Viz. I'll have a link for this in the description below. So let's get started. The first thing we need is a way to store the state of whether we have electricity or not. So we will create a helper for that. Helpers in Home Assistants are a way to store custom states. So for example, if you want to combine a bunch of sensors, you can use a helper for that as well. I'll be using a simple helper called toggle, which is like a boolean. It stores the state true or false, and I'll call it electricity. So the state of this helper will tell us whether we have electricity or not, and I like using the lightning bolt icon for this. That's done. Now we need a way to know whether we have electricity or not, and to do that I'll be communicating with this smart plug. So what I'm planning to do is I will teach Home Assistant how to connect to this smart plug and see if it's online or not. So let me plug this in first. Okay, so I plugged in the smart plug, and if I go to devices and Viz and then the smart plug, it's unavailable right now because I just plugged it in, but it should come back soon. Okay, so it's online. So we can use this unavailable state as well to see if the plug is online or not, but it isn't as reliable in my experience. So the better way to do it is to use an integration called ping. But for the ping integration, what you need is your smart plug should have a static IP. I won't teach you how to set a static IP for your smart plug, but you will need this MAC address to do so, and go into your router's settings and set the static IP. So you can go on YouTube and check your brands how to set static IP in your router's brand or in your ONT, and it will teach you how to do so. And once you've set the static IP, you can follow along my tutorial. Now we'll go and add an integration called ping. Ping is actually a command in computers which tests whether there's a connection to some device or not using the IP address. So here I'll type in the IP address for my smart plug. I've already set a static IP for it, which is 192.168.1.150, and I'll click submit. Now it will try and ping the smart plug, and if it's online it will show that it's connected. Okay, so since it's online it shows connected, and if I turn off the smart plug it will go and show disconnected. So let me turn it off. And by turning it off, I mean I disconnected from the mains power. So if you have plugged this smart plug to your mains and not to some battery backup inverter, it will disconnect from the mains and disconnect from the Wi-Fi and show disconnected here. It takes a minute or so to update. Let's wait. Okay, now as you can see it has disconnected. We can use this state to set the state of our helper. You might be thinking, why am I not using this state directly in my automations to know whether we have electricity or not? The issue is, if I directly use this as a state, it isn't reliable because sometimes your smart plug can get disconnected from your Wi-Fi for other reasons than loss of power. Right now I'm using just one smart plug, but the better way to do this is if you have multiple smart plugs connected to your mains, then you will be pinging all of them. And if all of them go disconnected, then that means that there's a power loss. But for this demo I'll be just using one, but it's better if you use multiple. So here what I've done is create an automation which triggers when this smart plug, this IP address is connected, and when it is connected I'll go and look for the input toggle, and okay, it's input boolean, and I'll turn it on. Okay, yeah, and in entity I'll choose the electricity input boolean. So what's happening here is when the smart plug is connected to the Wi-Fi, it will turn on the electricity boolean. I'll save it and call it electricity. if you are using multiple devices, multiple smart plugs, you will create the ping integration for all of them, and here you will add triggers for all of them. And one thing more that you need to do is in if you will go and combine all those and check if the state of the device, I'll show you for this one. You will check if it's connected, and if when you have multiple devices, you will check if all of them are connected. That way you are sure that the mains power is back on. I'll delete it since it's redundant for just one smart plug, and I'll save it. I'll create one more automation to turn off that helper. Create new automation, and here the trigger will be the opposite. It will be when it is disconnected, and what will happen here is I'll turn off that boolean. I'll call it no electricity. So like I said, it's better if you use multiple smart plugs, but I can't show that in a demo because I just have one spare one. But I hope you understand what I mean. Now that we have both the automations, what will happen is when the smart plugs come online, it will show toggle the boolean to on, and when it goes offline, it will toggle the boolean to off. So I'll go to my dashboard, and I've created a new dashboard for today's demo. I will just add a new widget to it. Let's see, add card, and I'll be using the entity card for this. And in entity, I can just search for the electricity input boolean and save. So right now it's off because I've turned off my smart plug, but if I turn it on, it will turn to on in just a minute or so. So let's wait a moment. Okay, so as you can see, it has turned back on. So this is a basic of the electricity monitoring automations. This way you can know whether your home has electricity or not. And using the two automations that we created, you can add other actions. For example, if you want to get notified using your home assistant app on your mobile or maybe Telegram that power just came back, or just there's a power cut right now. More things that you can do with this is calculate the number of power cuts during a day and the duration of it. So next thing I'll show you is how to do that. I'll add a bunch of more helpers for it. So the helpers I need, the first helper I need will be a date time helper, which will store when the last power cut happened, because that is important to know. Last power cut, and it will be a date and time. Another helper that I need is a counter, which I'll use to store the number of power cuts during the day. Number of power cuts. Then I'll use a number helper, which will store the number of minutes for the duration of the power cuts. Duration of power cuts. The maximum value for this ideally will be the number of minutes in a day, and I think that's 86,400. I hope I'm right. And I guess that's it. Yeah, these are the 4 helpers I need. Now I'll create a bunch of automations so that these values get updated and reset and stored and everything. So let's go to the automations. Okay, so now we'll modify the automations to use the new helpers that we created. The first modification we'll do is in the no electricity automation. So when the electricity goes or the power cut happens, we need to store the time when the power cut happened, and increment the counter of the number of power cuts in a day by 1. So the first thing we'll do is input date time set, and in date time I'll add the value, and in entity I need to use the last power cut date time, and the date and time here I'll use the now function, and then use the strftime function to convert it to a format that Home Assistant likes. So it will be percent year, month, day, hour, minute, and second. So this is the format Home Assistant likes, and I'll convert it to this and then click save. I'll first make sure that this is working by triggering run action. Okay, so there's a error here, and let's see, invalid date time specified. Now .strftime year, minute, date. Okay, so it does not like this one, and maybe it will like this one. Save, and then I'll click run action, and action ran successfully. So there's no issue here, and this is done. The next thing I'll do is add a counter and increment the counter by 1, and the entity will be the number of power cuts. and then save. So this is all we need to do in the no electricity automation. Okay, now the no electricity automation is done. We need to modify the automation of electricity to calculate the duration of the power cut. But I won't be doing that in the electricity automation, and I will be creating new automation for it because I need to use that automation in another place as well, and it will become easier to do that by creating a separate automation. So I'll create a new automation, and I won't add a trigger for it because, like I said, I need to trigger it from two different automations, and I don't need to add a trigger for it then. So I'll go to do, and I need to set the input number that we created, set its value, and the entity is duration of power cuts. So to calculate the duration of power cut, it's slightly complicated. I can't write the code here in the value, so I'll need to go and use the edit in YAML option. So here in the data field, I'll add a value and then write the template like this. So this is how you write a template in Home Assistant. So the template is going to be slightly complicated. We'll be subtracting the number. We'll be subtracting the current time and the time when the power cut happened and calculate the seconds between those and then converting into minutes. So first we need the current time, which is now, and use its timestamp, and then subtract it from subtract from it the timestamp of the last power cut. So as timestamp strp time, the strp time converts the time format from one to another. In strp time I'll write states, and the states function extracts the value from a helper, and the value of the name of the helper is input date time and last power cut. So now the states function is closed. In the strp time I need to write the format, and it's the same format that we used in the other automation. Year, month, date, there's a hyphen in between them. Year, month, date, hour, minutes, and seconds. So that is the strp time function, and I'll close that, and then the as timestamp function is closed, and it will subtract the values. Just to be safe, what I'll do is I'll enclose all of this in an int because just to be type safe, and then close this and divide it by 60. So here's where the type safety comes in. If I'm dividing by any value, it can result in a decimal value in a float point, and I don't want that. I want integer values, and that is why I use the int function. Then this is the duration of the power cut, but we need to add this to the existing value. So for example, there are 2 power cuts during the day, and if I don't add it to the previous value, it will just erase it. So I'll just add it to the previous value of the state, and it's states, and it's the id is input number dot duration of power cuts. And I hope that is right, and we'll test it out in just a moment, and I'll save it, and I'll call it calculate power cut duration. We need to trigger this from the electricity when the electricity come back. So I'll add an action automation trigger, and the automation that it will trigger is the calculate power cut duration, and that is it. So now we have both the automation set up. When electricity come back, it will calculate the power cut duration, and when the power cut happens, it will store the value of the current power cut when it happened and increment the counter by 1. Next thing we need to do is reset the values at midnight. So when the new day starts, we reset all the values. So I'll go and create an automation for it as well. In this automation, we need to do multiple things. First, we'll add the resetting part. So I'll add an action and reset the counter value. The counter is number of power cuts, and then what I'll do is reset the value for the duration as well. So input number set, the entity is duration of power cuts, and its value is 0. But there's another thing that we need to be worried about. So I'll call it reset at midnight. I haven't completed this automation, I just clicked save accidentally. Okay. The next thing we need to do at midnight is, in case there's no power at midnight, we need to do a couple of things. I'll explain them in a moment. But the first thing I'll do is I'll create an if condition, and in the if I'll look for the helper that we created. and the helper is electricity, and if the state is off. So if at midnight there's no electricity, what we'll do is we'll set the value for the last power cut to midnight, and by that what will happen is when the electricity comes back after midnight, it will calculate the duration from midnight only. So what will happen is for the current day, the power cut will be calculated from midnight only. So when the electricity is off, then set the value for the last date time. Input date time set, and then date and time again, and I'll copy paste the thing that I wrote in the other automation. Here it is. So it will set it, and I think I forgot the entity, last power cut. And another thing we need to do is, since for the previous day we'll power calculate the power cut as if the power came back at midnight. So what happens is for the new day, it treats midnight as when the power cut happened, and for the previous day it treats midnight as when the power came back. So the calculation for each day is perfect. This is not necessary to do, but in case you're storing these values in some place, so it is very important that the values are accurate. So I'll trigger the automation from here as well. So this is why I'm in the wrong place. Add action. So this is why I created a separate automation for this, because I needed to trigger it from here as well. Calculate power cut duration, and I think this should happen before I change the value for the last power cut. So I guess that is it. The other, I'll take it to the top before any resetting happens. So for the trigger I'll add midnight as the time. So at 12 a.m. this thing will happen. So I'll save it. Now let's see if everything is working correctly. I'll go to the electricity dashboard that we made and use the entities card for it, and I'll show you the value of every helper. So last power cut, then the what else did we made, counter for number of power cuts, and then duration of power cut. So these are the three helpers that we created, and I'll save it. So there are already some values from my previous testing, but let's see if these values are updated. So right now there's an electricity still on. I'll turn off the switch, and what should happen in just a minute, the number of power cuts should go up by 1, and the duration of power cuts won't change right now, but it will change when the electricity comes back. So let's see. Right now it's 12:47 a.m. and it will turn off in just a moment. Okay, so it turned off, and you see it stored the time for the last power cut as 12:47 a.m. and the number of power cuts also increased by 1. I'll wait a couple of minutes and then turn the power back on, so the duration of power cut gets updated. Okay, so now it has been a couple of minutes, and I'll turn the power back on to the smart plug, and it's 12:50 right now, so there should be a jump of 3 or 4 minutes here in just a moment. Okay, so it has come back on. It was very fast, but the duration didn't update, so there must be a bug. Let's fix this. So it's calculate from electricity, so this is also triggered. So there's a bug in the calculation, I think. Okay, so as you can see, I did a typo here. It was it was capital S here, and I think that's the only bug I have. I'm willing to test it again. I'll save it and then go back to overview, electricity, and turn it back off. Wait a minute. The electricity was turned off, the number of power cuts increased, and the time also updated. Now let's wait a few minutes. Okay, so it has been a couple of minutes. It's 12:55 right now, and I'll turn the power back on, and there should be a jump of 3 to 4 minutes, I think, here, and it shouldn't take long. Okay, so it came back on, and as you can see, there was a jump of 3 minutes here, so it's all working perfectly. So that is all the automations that we needed to make in this video. I won't be showing you how to talk to Siri, how to allow Siri to talk to Home Assistant and get the data from it in this video, but hopefully in one of my next videos I'll show you how to do that. In this video I'll give you another tip. I like to use a gauge card to display this information, which looks much better. So there's a gauge card in Home Assistant, and if I go and select the duration of power cuts, it will show that in a very good manner. By default the maximum is 100 minutes, so that's like 1 hour and 40 minutes of power cuts. But let's say on average you have 4 hours of power cuts daily, you can use something like 240 minutes or 4 hours, so that this is much more appealing and good looking for your dashboard. That was all for this video. In one of the future videos I'll also show you a much better way of seeing if electricity is there in your home or not, but this was a simple way to do it using smart plugs. And if you have any other questions about smart home automation or anything, you can ask them to me in the comments, and I'll try and answer them to the best of my capacity. Thank you.